Welcome again, everyone. It's great to see you on this Monday morning, day before Constitution Day. We are here to go over the State Seal of Civic Engagement. You'll hear me refer to it as the State Seal or the SSCE throughout the presentation. And I want to start with some brief introductions. If you don't know me, my name is Sarah Smith. I am the lead consultant here at this California Department of Education, or CDE, for the State Seal. And the office that administers the State Seal is the Professional Learning Innovations Office, or the PLEO. And I am joined today by two other magnificent members of our State Seal team. So first, I'll introduce Havana Cheng. She is a staff services analyst in the PLEO. She was instrumental in processing all of our insignia requests this spring. So between Havana and I think we sent out just around 16,000 insignias this year, which was really, really exciting. So thank you for that, Havana. And then also joining us today is Julia Agostinelli. She is the administrator in the PLEO and has been a tremendous supporter and promoter of the State Seal since we began offering it back in 2021. So thank you for being here as well, Julia. The PLEO, just for a little bit of context, it's part of the Professional Learning Support Division, or PLSD, here at the CDE. You may have worked with the PLEO or our division with the California Serves Grant Project, Anti-Bias Education Grant Program, Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant Program, Literacy Coaches and Reading Specialist Program, several other federal and state professional learning programs that many of you may be familiar with. So we are really excited to host this webinar today. It is something I have been meaning to do for a long time, and so I'm glad it's finally here. And again, thank you all for joining us. So here is the plan for today. Welcome and housekeeping. We'll do just a little bit of housekeeping right after this. I will provide a pretty brief overview and history of the State Seal just to help put things into context for today. We'll talk about statewide criteria and eligibility. We'll provide some guidance for local implementation of the State Seal. We will do a walkthrough of the 2024-25 insignia request form. It's still under development. It's almost ready to go live, but it's at a point where I can walk through it with you and show you some of the new features we've incorporated for this year. We'll also talk about data reporting. And then we'll finish with some related opportunities. We'll take questions and we'll provide our contact information. I should mention the Q&A tool is open for questions as well. And thank you, Julia and Havana, for keeping an eye on that during the presentation. Okay, so for housekeeping, webinar participants have been placed on mute. Like I mentioned, we have opened up the Q&A tool in the webinar, and there will be time at the end of the session for questions and answers. The webinar is scheduled to go from 10 until noon. I don't think it's going to take that long, but wanted to save that amount of time just in case. So either way, there will be plenty of time for questions at the end. We are recording this webinar, so it will be posted to the State Seal webpage. It will take a couple of weeks for us to process it, make sure everything is accessible, but we will post the video and the slide deck to the State Seal webpage as soon as all of that is ready. And the slide deck was shared with email. It says the slide deck will be shared after the webinar. I ended up emailing it to all registered participants about an hour or so ago. So you should all have a copy of the slide deck. It is in PDF. There is a button on the slides that have notes where you can toggle the notes on or off. So if you want to have access to what is said in the notes as well, it's there for you. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, I will begin with a brief overview of the State Seal of Civic Engagement. So the State Seal is a recognition conferred by the State Superintendent of Public Instruction for California public school students in grades 10, 11, or 12 who demonstrate excellence in civics education and participation, as well as an understanding of the United States Constitution, the California Constitution, and the democratic system of government. So the State Seal got its start back in 2017 with Assembly Bill 24. This legislation instructed the CDE to develop a set of statewide criteria to recognize students who have demonstrated excellence in civic education. So the intent of the state seal per California Education Code, or EC, section 51470, is to encourage and create pathways for pupils in elementary and secondary schools to become civically engaged in democratic governmental institutions at the local, state, and national levels. A brief timeline. So as I mentioned, the state seal got its start back in 2017. From 2018 to 2019, the CDE worked with an advisory group of secondary history, social science, or HSS teachers and representatives from other groups to develop the statewide criteria and related guidance, which we'll go over today. The CDE presented draft criteria and guidance to the State Board of Education, or SBE, in July and then again in September of 2019. Got some really great feedback both times that was then factored in. And then the State Board of Education adopted final statewide criteria and implementation guidance in September 2020. And the CDE offered the state seal for the very first time during that very memorable 2020-21 school year. So it's really interesting to talk to LEAs that implemented during that school year when, as you probably remember, schools were mostly remote. So it was an exciting time to introduce a new program. It's come a long way since then, though. Okay, so moving on, I will review the state board adopted statewide criteria for earning a state seal of civic engagement. So before I get into this, I'll just preview. The state seal looks different at every LEA. So every local educational agency or LEA that offers it, it's going to look a little different from place to place. So some LEAs have their own criteria, their own requirements, their own procedures. The one constant is that any student who earns the state seal must fulfill all 5 of these statewide criteria. So the first criterion is that the student must be engaged in academic work in a productive way. You'll notice it doesn't say the student has to graduate, but the student does have to be engaged in academic work in a productive way somehow. Criterion 2 is the student must demonstrate a competent understanding of United States and California constitutions, functions and governance of local governments, tribal government structures and organizations, the role of the citizen in a constitutional democracy, and democratic principles, concepts, and processes. So you'll notice no specific high school courses are listed here, but this really is the content piece of the State Seal of Civic Engagement criterion. So you can see content that would be covered in a U.S. history course, an American government course, and other courses as well. Criterion 3, the student must participate in one or more informed civic engagement project that address real-world problems and require students to identify and inquire into civic needs or problems, consider varied responses, take action, and reflect on efforts. So this criterion is really digging into the civic engagement part of the State Seal of Civic Engagement. Criterion 4 is that the student must demonstrate civic knowledge, skills, and dispositions through self-reflection. And then criterion 5 is that the student must exhibit character traits that reflect civic mindedness and a commitment to positively impact the classroom, school, community, and/or society. So here you have the internal reflection as well as the external reflection into that civic learning and civic engagement. So the state board adopted criteria also included implementation guidance. So this goes a little bit more in depth into each criterion. It offers ideas, questions, and considerations for structuring local requirements to award the State Seal of Civic Engagement. You can find that at https://www.cde.ca.gov/618335. I highly recommend you check it out. It's pretty useful guidance for each criterion. And the local programming presentation on our State Seal webpage at https:// www.cde.ca.gov/620836 breaks down the criteria with key questions from the implementation guidance. So we'll actually be going over some small portions of that local programming presentation today. That presentation goes a little bit more in depth on each of the 5 criteria. Okay, eligibility. We'll talk about who is eligible to offer, who is eligible to get a state seal of civic engagement. So at the institutional level, the state seal is offered through LEAs, local educational agencies. This would include your county offices of education, or COEs, school districts, and charter schools. What that means is that individual school sites may not offer the state seal without it also being available district or county-wide. It's really the LEA that does the adoption of district-wide or county-wide programming. They request the insignias from the CDE. We communicate with the LEA. So if you are at a school site in a county or a district that does not yet offer the state seal, that is one of the first recommendations that we make, is working within the LEA to make that available LEA-wide. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. Private schools are not eligible to offer the state seal. However, they may establish their own civic recognition opportunities. This is similar to the state seal of biliteracy, where private schools are also not eligible for the state seal of biliteracy, but there has been a movement for private schools to offer their own state seal of biliteracy. I will mention at this time, I'm not aware of any private schools that have yet offered their own version of a civic recognition seal, but it is something that we hear about a lot. I know there's a lot of interest going in that direction. And then students schooled through an independent study program through a traditional independent study program with oversight of a credentialed teacher and an LEA that has adopted programming to offer the state seal, those students would be eligible to earn a state seal of civic engagement. Now, in terms of student eligibility, any student in a participating LEA in grades 10, 11, or 12, and again, in a public school, a direct funded charter school, an indirect funded charter school, the juvenile justice system, and or in alternative school settings at a participating LEA is eligible to earn a state seal of civic engagement. I'll mention those of you who are familiar with the state seal, you are probably surprised that we have mentioned students in grade 10 being eligible. Until recently, we had only specified that students in grades 11 or 12 would be eligible for a state seal. We have widened that eligibility to students in grade 10, but only to students in grade 10 who have met all 5 of that statewide criteria, as well as any locally adopted requirements. So because the state seal, it involves mastering content that is typically in an 11th grade U.S. history and a 12th grade American government class, it is most likely that a student will not be able to fulfill all 5 of those statewide criteria until grade 12. And in terms of our request numbers, the vast majority of students who are earning the state seal are in grade 12. But we didn't want to exclude any student in grade 10 who may have already somehow met all 5 of those criteria. Maybe they've been taking college level courses, maybe they're on a different schedule. So in the event that a student in grade 10 has met all 5 criteria, they would be eligible. But again, nevertheless, the vast majority of students who earn a state seal are in grade 12. LEAs are encouraged to develop local means of recognition for younger students as a pathway to earning the state seal in later grades. So this could look like promotion certificates when a student promotes from grade 8 to 9, chords, notations on grade 8 or grade 9 transcripts, that a student has become, civically engaged, but the student cannot earn the state seal of civic engagement until they've fulfilled all 5 of those statewide criteria, grade 10, 11, or 12. Okay, eligible documents. So some changes this year compared to last year. The state seal of civic engagement is intended to be very accessible to students in a wide variety of educational experiences. So the state seal of civic engagement can be placed on a high school diploma, an alternative high school diploma as outlined in Education Code 51225.31. You can find information about this alternative high school diploma pathway from https://www.cde.ca.gov/613733. That's a new edition coming up for 24-25. Insignias can also be affixed to general education development certificates, certificates of completion as defined in Education Code Section 56390. These certificates of completion are for students who cannot complete the requirements for a regular high school diploma that the LEA offers. So these students are often eligible for educational placement and services under their individual education program. So that's just a little bit of information about the certificate of completion. And then finally, transcripts for grade 11 or 12, and that should say 10 up there now. We just made that change recently, but the insignia can be affixed to a student's transcript in 10, 11, or 12. Sometimes students may choose to do this in grade 11 if they have met all 5 criteria and they've earned the state seal in grade 11, if they want to have that on their transcript for college applications. LEAs are welcome to create local notations, but this is the official list of documents upon which the insignia can be affixed. So the insignia itself, there is a picture of it right here on the screen. They are gold embossed. They're very embossed. They're very nice. They're about the same size as the State Seal of Biliteracy insignias. Those of you who participated in the first year or two of the State Seal program probably remember our first insignias were gigantic, and they took up, half of a diploma or transcript. So those are collector's items now. Now the insignias are a much smaller size that can fit onto a student's document much more easily. So they're pretty, they're gold, they're embossed. Each student gets one embossed insignia to affix to one eligible document. And that's one of the most common questions that come up. I think it's with the Golden State Merit Diploma Seal. Students get a gold embossed insignia, and then they also get a black and white insignia that goes in the transcript. With the State Seal of Civic Engagement, it's just one insignia per student. So what we have seen LEAs do sometimes is they will request the one insignia from the CDE that might go on the transcript, and then they might create a local form of notation that can be put on a transcript or a local certificate or any other local document. But I want to reiterate, each student gets one gold embossed State Seal of Civic Engagement insignia. Okay. I am now going to move on to some information on local implementation, and then after that, we'll get into the insignia request form. Okay, so as I mentioned, the State Seal is a local opportunity, and the process through which a student earns a State Seal of Civic Engagement differs from LEA to LEA. So we have the statewide criteria, but each LEA develops its own course requirements, civic engagement project requirements, application procedures, etc. So you may have one LEA where students are required to take world history for the State Seal and others where they're not required. Some LEAs may have GPA requirements, others may not. There may be local assessments, there may not. It's up to the LEA to make those decisions and what makes sense for their students and their community. Students also apply for the State Seal through their LEA, so not through the CDE. So the LEA would create, applications, surveys, guidelines for reflections, letters of recommendation, etc. So the Leveraging Equity and Access in Democratic Education has published 2 reports that highlight examples of local State Seal programs. So the first one is called Breaking New Ground with California's State Seal of Civic Engagement, Lessons from Year 1. You can find that online at https://bit.ly/S, capital S, capital C, capital E, capital Y, capital E, capital A, capital R, 1, just the number 1. So that's where you can find that report. Their second report of follow-up came out in 2022. It is titled California's Commitment to K-12 Civic Learning, a 2022 Assessment. And that can be found at https://bit.ly/capital C, capital I, capital V, capital I, capital C, capital L, capital E, capital A, capital R, capital N. And I apologize. I have to read out all of the web addresses just to ensure that everything is accessible. And I learned that with the bit.ly addresses, everything is case specific. So I have to emphasize when capital letters are used. And thank you, Havana, by the way, for putting all these links in the chat for us. So you may also want to check out the Authentic Preparation Today working group. They developed the image that is actually used on our statewide insignia, so we are very thankful for that. They also created resources to support LEAs in developing local guidelines, including an implementation roadmap, which is pretty useful. It is available at https://bit.ly/capital A, capital P, capital T, capital W, capital G. I want to go over just a very sample general process that an LEA may decide to take as they are going from not having the state seal to offering it to students for the first time. I'm a runner, so it makes me think of the Couch to 5K program. So this is one recommendation, one thing that we have seen LEAs follow as they've offered state seal programs locally. So these are not required steps. Again, there's a lot of flexibility in how the LEA can develop a local program, but this tends to be a process that we see LEAs go through. So it would include creating a local state seal implementation team, developing a board resolution, and then getting support for adoption of possible local criteria and programming. I get this question a lot, are board resolutions required? They are not required at the statewide level, but it is something that we see a lot of LEAs go through first. So it's a recommended practice. Many LEAs also, in addition to adopting the statewide state seal criteria, may also want to develop and adopt additional local criteria. This could be something that makes the state seal more reflective of the local community, maybe their criteria for a specific student population. And again, it's optional, it's not required. Then we see LEAs move into, the real heavy lifting of the program, developing the local programming components to support students, meeting the statewide criteria and local requirements. So courses, decisions about grades and GPAs and assessments and engagement projects and reflections and applications. And then the fun part, requesting insignias from the CDE and distributing them to the students. So I'm going to go into each step just a little bit, provide some recommendations, considerations, and resources for each. Okay, starting off with creating the implementation team. Given the complex nature of determining eligibility and awarding the state seal, it does seem to be helpful to have an implementation team around you to coordinate development of criteria, policies, and procedures. If possible, it would be ideal to get representatives from the LEA level, so the county or the district. You'd also want to have site leadership involved if possible. Would be great to have not just secondary HSS teachers, but perhaps elementary HSS teachers involved, as well as educators from other subject areas. And if possible, representatives from a variety of school sites, perhaps traditional sites, magnet or charter sites, continuation sites, any other alternative education sites. Understanding it could be challenging to get that many people involved given how busy everyone is, but ideally, you'd have a variety of voices involved in developing this programming to ensure it's accessible, rigorous, and just well planned out from the beginning. It would be fantastic to have students involved on this implementation team if possible. community representatives, local officials. There are a lot of organizations out there who are really excited to promote and support the state seal, so their input could be helpful as well. The Civic Engagement Research Group, Educating for Democracy team created a state seal planning packet that includes a lot of resources to help this process. So there's guidance, there's guiding questions, there's templates, meeting templates to support the establishment of these teams. You can find that at https://bit.ly/capital C, capital E, capital R, capital G, capital T, OOLKIT. After forming your implementation team, maybe identifying an overarching purpose and strategy for your local state seal program, you may consider adopting a county, district, or charter site board resolution that supports the statewide state seal criteria. Maybe it identifies the intent to design a process for earning the state seal locally as well. And again, this is optional, but it's something that we have seen a lot of LEAs do. You may also consider including local control and accountability plan language related to civic engagement opportunities for students as a way to support offering the state seal locally. Our Los Angeles County Office of Education State Seal Collaborative webpage offers sample governing board resolutions, among many other resources to support local implementation. Recorded webinars, they've got it all. So you can find that at https://bit.ly/capital L, capital A, capital C, capital O, capital E, underscore, capital S, capital S, capital C, capital E. Definitely check out that collaborative. Michelle Herzog put that together, I think, starting back when we very first began offering the state seal of civic engagement. So there's a lot of wonderful resources on there. Okay, next. Implementation teams may also want to take inventory of the LEA's assets and needs. This can help focus efforts and develop an overarching strategy and goals for local implementation of the state seal. This could include looking at what opportunities and community connections are already in place, what courses cover civic curriculum or civic projects, where is there room to infuse this in other subject areas, who already participates. I mean, are there any neighboring LEAs that offer the state seal of civic engagement? Are there any barriers to entry for students in your LEA that may exist that can be addressed as well? That Educating for Democracy planning packet that I mentioned earlier also includes forms, guiding questions to help implementation teams take inventory and to guide those conversations. And again, that webpage address is https://bit.ly/capital C, capital E, capital R, capital G, capital T, OOLKIT. Okay, moving on. Once you have a team in place, perhaps a board resolution, you've taken some inventory, a next great step would be to develop optional local criteria. So in addition to the 5 statewide criteria, you may want to develop specific local criteria that reflect your local communities and school populations. So for instance, if this is a juvenile justice education center, those students may have different needs, different assets that would mean that different local criteria are very helpful to have in addition to that statewide set of criteria. This criteria can be crucial in ensuring maximum accessibility for students, accessibility for all students. And like I mentioned, students in alternative school settings. So the Santa Clara County Office of Education webpage, they've done a lot of work in offering the state seal to a variety of student populations. So they have a lot of resources to support development of very accessible local state seal programs. You can access their resources at https://bit.ly/S, S, E. And thank you, Havana, again for putting all of these links in the chat. Okay, so next, the LEA should consider developing specific local requirements and procedures that students will go through to earn a state seal. So this can be very minimal. It can also be very, very, very extreme, for lack of a better word. We see lots and lots in between. So typically what we see LEAs decide upon are course enrollment requirements, grade requirements, and local assessments. So will students be required to take US history, American government, economics, geography, world history, any other courses? Will there be minimum grade requirements? And if there are any local assessments that might be used. And I bring that up because the first school I taught at had a 12th grade student body population-wide civics exam that we gave every year. So I think that's probably the exception, but if that is something that your LEA offers or requires, that could be something to include in your state seal programming. You'd also want to determine civic engagement project guidelines and procedures. For instance, will there be one project per year? Do students engage in one multi-year project? Are there several smaller projects? What are the requirements for those projects? Basically, what does that civic engagement piece look like? You'd want to develop procedures for self-reflection and external recommendations, application procedures, how will insignias be distributed, and record keeping as well. So the Sacramento City Unified School District created local criteria and procedures for students working towards a state seal, and you can check those out on their webpage. That is at https://bit.ly/SCUSDSSCE. A few special considerations before we go on. I think I've mentioned accessibility a few times. That is really a hallmark of California's state seal of civic engagement. We are not the only state to offer a civic diploma seal, but California has really tried to make sure that our seal is accessible to students in a variety of educational backgrounds and situations. So when you're designing local programming, it's important to keep in mind how to make the seal accessible to students in a variety of backgrounds: continuation schools, juvenile justice programs, special education students, English learners, etc. We also hope that people keep in mind depth and how to encourage long-term deep civic engagement. So looking at how do we involve elementary and middle schools in efforts to earn a state seal, even though the students cannot receive that state seal in 8th grade or 6th grade, but how can we start students on the path to earning a state seal in later grades and starting that at the elementary level. And then finally, how to encourage interdisciplinary collaboration. So this could include involving other subjects in addition to history, social science, and development of local programming. LEAs could specifically consider connections to environmental literacy, and we see that happening actually quite a bit. These connections between the state seal of civic engagement and students pursuing the state seal through environmental literacy programs. Also have seen it with visual and performing arts, world languages, and career technical education. Okay, as I mentioned, it is really important to encourage long-term pathways for students to earn a state seal of civic engagement. And we do encourage LEAs to develop these local pathway programs that involve students in civics before high school. For an example of that, I would check out the Orange County Department of Education, who, along with the San Diego County Office of Education, created a kindergarten through grade 8 pathway program wherein participating districts can honor students in grades 3, 5, and 8 for their civic learning and civic engagement. So definitely check that out. You can find that information at https://bit.ly/OCDE civics. Okay, moving on to requesting insignias and how LEAs can go about requesting insignias. So our state seal of civic engagement insignia request form is updated annually, meaning we post a new request form for each request year, each school year. It's usually posted in the early winter. We've been posting it earlier and earlier each year. My goal for this year is to have the the state seal request form for 24-25 posted by Thanksgiving. I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. I probably just jinxed things, but that is my goal. So the participating LEA, they are the ones who submit the insignia request form. Requests should not come from individual school sites unless they are charter schools or students. I did have a student request one insignia last year, or community organizations. Even if your community organization has been helping out an LEA with the insignia program, that request must come from the LEA itself. This form can be used for new requests, for additional requests, or for correcting requests, and I'll show what that looks like in just a moment. We process insignia requests on an ongoing basis. So what that means is there's a very extended deadline for insignia requests. Basically, as soon as you have an idea of the number of students that will be earning an insignia for that school year, and how those insignias will be distributed, meaning how many will go on diplomas or transcripts or GED diplomas, you can submit that insignia request. We turn them around pretty quickly. We do recommend that you allow 4 weeks for processing time for us to get the request, for the request to get to you in the mail, and then to give you time on your end to affix the insignias to the documents before they go to the students. So if there is a deadline, it's 4 weeks before you absolutely need them, but we do process them on an ongoing basis. The vast majority of requests are submitted from about April 1st to June 15th. We do get some that are submitted earlier. Sometimes if a student is graduating in December, we'll get a request very, very early, but that's been pretty rare, but it does happen. And we do get requests all through the summer, corrections requests. So it's a pretty extended request season. So with that said, I'm going to shift over to our 2024-25 State Seal of Civic Engagement Insignia request. Hopefully the screen transferred over to that and you're not seeing slides anymore. If you are still seeing slides, just put it in the chat and I'll pay attention to the chat for a moment. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. Okay. So what you're looking at is our 24-25 insignia request form. It is still in development mode. So what you are seeing here is not available officially online yet. It will be posted like I'm hoping to post it by Thanksgiving. And it will look very, very similar, if not identical to what you are seeing here. Just a small changes on the back end of things before we post it. So I'm going to walk through this. I'm going to show you a variety of different ways of how you can fill it out. If you have completed a request for prior years, you'll notice a couple of changes that I hope are helpful. This insignia request form will be available from our State Seal webpage. The address for the State Seal webpage is https www.cde.ca.gov/620-836. Okay, so this is the first page that you see. We do get some questions from LEAs when they come to this page for the first time. It is kind of hard to see the buttons at the bottom that tell you what to do, where to go next. And so it looks like it's just information. It is information, it's useful information, but it is the very first page of the insignia request form. You are at the right place. So we have information on the criteria, the ed code, Some basic instructions, just reminders that it's the people at the LEA who should be completing this form. A reminder that we will mail one seal per eligible student where it can be placed. A reminder that the form can be used for additional insignia requests or corrections. Information on how we're collecting this data, and then contact information. You got our state seal webpage, our state seal email, and then our division phone line as well. So you click on the next button at the very bottom, and I've pre-populated this with some information, just some test information. So whoever is the contact information, you'll enter their name here, phone number, email. Let's say that you would like the insignias to be mailed to someone else. You can click no right here where it says should seals be mailed to your attention, and there'll be an option for you to identify someone else that we should address the insignias to. Otherwise, if you're requesting and they should come to you, you just click yes, and then you move on. Okay, so here we get to a pretty important page. This is where you are indicating if this is a new, corrected, or additional request form. The vast majority that we receive are new requests. So this is the option that you would select if you are submitting your insignia request form for the first time for that school year. Let's say that you realize you forgot to add a school site or you need to remove a school site from a previous request, or just correct any information that may need correcting. You would choose corrected form. And then additional request would be if you end up needing more insignias, more students qualified than you realized. It's fantastic news. You're just submitting an additional request. The key thing to keep in mind is that for a corrected form, the information that you provide will replace your previous request. For the additional request, we're just adding those numbers, adding those sites, if that's what you're adding. Okay. A quick note to charter schools. Please only submit an insignia request form if your charter is directly funded. If your charter school is not directly funded, you would be requesting that information requesting the state seal through your district or county state seal coordinator. The majority of requests that we get are from directly funded charters, but just in case. And if you're not sure what the status is of your charter's funding model, we have a link for you to go to the California Charter Schools database, and it will tell you what the funding model is. So for this sample request form, I've already populated it with Monterey County. You would enter the LEA name. So again, it wouldn't be the school site. Even if it's just one school site in the LEA requesting the insignias, the insignia request still should come from the LEA. So let's say it was only Salinas High School that was participating. That request would still come from Salinas Union High School District. And then right here where you enter your county district school code or CDS code, you want to make sure you're entering the code for the LEA. So if this request is for all of Monterey County, then it would be the CDS code for all of Monterey County. This fictional request is from Salinas Union High School District, so I have the CDS code for Salinas Union High School District. And again, if it was just Salinas High, we'd still want this right here to be the district CDS code. Charters are different. If it's a directly funded charter, you're going to enter your directly funded charter CDS code. But if it's an indirectly funded charter, it again would be coming through the district or the county, I guess, rather. So it would be that county code. It does say here, please take care to enter the CDS code correctly. We will verify them when we go through the request. And what usually happens is if it's an incorrect CDS code, we just reach out and confirm the correct CDS code with you before we send the insignias. I will mention right here, if you do decide that you need to make requests to previous year's insignia requests, let's say that you need to update some information from 22, 23, just send us an email to do that and we'll make the changes manually. It's no problem at all. And if you are, for some reason, wanting to request insignias for future years, please don't use this insignia request form. This is what we use to gather data for the current school year. So just send us an email if you're thinking you want to plan way in advance and want to order insignias way in advance. Just send us an email and we can talk about that. We're happy to help. Okay, so I put the mailing address. This is just the mailing address for the CDE. You would put the mailing address for the LEA that is requesting the insignias. And I'm going to go through, I'm going to fill out a version of each form. I'm going to start with new form since that's the most common that we received. So new form is selected. Click on next. You're going to enter these school site names here. So we'll put Alisal High and then separated with a semicolon and then Salinas High. My dad went to Alisal High. I went to Salinas High. That's why I'm picking on these ones. So this right here is the page, SIL recipient information, where we get the most questions and the most corrections. And it's a little bit different this year from previous years. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this particular page. So this is where you're basically telling the CDE two things. How many students you think are receiving an insignia? I guess three things. How those insignias will be distributed. And then if you're using any excess insignias from last year, so how many insignias you actually want mailed to you. So right here, you're going to start off by entering the total number of students that you anticipate are receiving an insignia. So I'm just going to keep things easy. We're going to say 100 students at this LEA are expected to receive an insignia. Now, if I've been participating in the state seal for a few years, I may have another 20 insignias lying around. Who knows? So if you are using any excess insignias retained from requests submitted in previous years, you're going to click on yes. If I click on no, these two boxes down here, they went away. We're going to click on yes. What you would do is indicate how many insignias on hand are going to be used for these hundred of students. So if you have a ton of insignias left over, let's say you're using all leftover insignias, you don't need us to mail you any at all. That's what it's going to look like. 100 students receiving the insignia. You're using 100 already on hand, so we don't need to mail you any. That's why there's a 0 right here. On our end, we'll record that as 100 students receiving the insignia, but we're not taking 100 insignias out of our inventory. Maybe you have 50 that you're using, but you need another 50. That's what that would look like. So we would record 100 students receiving the insignia, but we are only mailing 50 because the LEA is using another 50 that are already there. So that's new for this year. At the end, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to clarify or go over, but this is a new addition just because we've seen how frequently it happens. If you're only using 25 on hand, you're going to be requesting 75. We'll mail you 75. So that's the first thing to point out. I'm going to go back to no, just to get that part off the screen and make it a little bit more streamlined. So let's say this is my first time participating in the state seal. I don't have any insignias lying around. I've got 100 kids who are receiving it. I'm not reusing any. I click no. So we at the CDE, we will know to mail you 100 insignias for those 100 students. And one more time, just to reiterate, it's 1 insignia per student. So whatever you have right here, total number of students receiving an insignia, it should be reflected in these boxes down here when we get to distribution. So I guess we'll get to distribution. So you have the number of students receiving an insignia up here. Right down here, we're asking you to estimate how those insignias will be distributed among all the different document types. So out of that 100, how many students are affixing their insignias to a diploma? How many to an alternative high school diploma, GED diploma, certificate of completion, grade 11 transcript, grade 12 transcript? And we understand that in many, if not most cases, this is an estimate, and that is totally fine. That is one reason why we have the corrected request option, and we also will work with LEAs during summer to check in on these numbers and see if there were any changes. So for our 100 students receiving an insignia, you might have a case where all 100 are going on diplomas, and that's probably the most common request that we receive. with all insignias being affixed to diplomas. So you'd put 100 here, 0 for alternative, 0 for GED, 0 for certificates of completion, 0 for transcripts, grade 11 and grade 12. The key thing is that this right here adds up to this 100. Maybe we're doing 50 on diplomas, and then we're doing, let's say, 25 certificates of completion, and we have another 25 grade 11 students. So this would be 100 separate students, but the insignias are just being affixed, differently depending on the student. But again, the most common that we see typically would be all insignias being affixed to diplomas. And this doesn't change if I go right here and I say that insignias are being used from the prior year. This just tells us how many insignias to mail to you. Down here, this number should still reflect the total number of students receiving an insignia, just so we know how those students are having the insignias delivered to them. So once that is all entered, you click next, and it's pretty easy after that. You are certifying that the LEA superintendent, charter school administrator, authorized designee agree that the electronic signature is the legally binding equivalent of a handwritten signature. A few more certifications, and then down here you enter a electronic signature. I've just put in test. You click on next. And this is important. You have to click submit or select submit right here in order for the request to go through. If you just stop here, the CDE will not get your request, and you're going to be sitting around waiting for insignias for a while because we didn't get the request. So you'll click submit. This will take you back to the CDE webpage. You'll know it went through because you will get an email. Within a couple of minutes, you'll get an email saying that the CDE has received your request and will be sending you out insignias, or that we are correcting your insignia request. So it's very, very important. Click submit. Okay. I'm going to navigate back and just run through the corrected and additional request form. It won't take quite as long for those, but just to show you what they look like, how they're a little different. So I'm back at this LEA information page. I'm going to click on corrected request. So this is what you select if you've already submitted a request for the school year, but you need to make some changes. You don't need to order additional insignias, but maybe you have to change the school site list or the distribution of insignias. So corrected, I'm keeping Monterey in here, Salinas Union High School District. We've got their CDS code. You'll notice there's no mailing address to enter because we're not mailing anything. We're just correcting the data on our end. Click on next. Let's say that students at Alisal High did not receive insignias, so it's just going to be Salinas High. You enter Salinas High. You click next. Let's say that, let's say no, you're not using any insignias from previous years. Maybe instead of 100 students, it is actually 85 that are receiving an insignia, and all 85 are going on diplomas. You click next. You certify, you sign it, you click next, and you submit. So again, that data is replacing your original state seal insignia request form. We're not mailing you any insignias. We're just replacing the information. And actually, so I haven't been able to see the chat until now, but I moved some things on my screen so I can see a question come in. So I'll try to answer that as I see them, as I can. I see Michelle is asking to confirm if a 10th or 11th grader meets the criteria and wants them affixed to diplomas, the LEA can order the insignias and hang on to them for 1 to 2 years to affix to diplomas when they graduate, or wait to order them when the students are seniors. That's a great question, and that's come up the first couple times just this year. The LEA should wait until the year that the student will receive the insignia to request the insignia. So let's say that a 10th grader meets the criteria, wants them affixed to the diploma. I'd recommend the LEA to wait those 2 years, or if it's the 11th grader, wait that 1 year and then request the insignia during the year that the student is actually getting the diploma and graduating. So yeah, wait and order them when the students are seniors. No, that's a great question, Michelle. It's come up a couple times. Okay. I'm going to go back and go through if the students change schools in the meantime. That is a fantastic question. So if the student changes school sites and they're in the same district, I think that would be an internal district decision. If the student changes schools and moves completely out of district and they're in an LEA that no longer or that doesn't offer the state seal, I would say in that case, for now, email us at ssce@cde.ca.gov. I think it would depend on the situation, the timing of everything. Let's say the student earned that insignia in 10th grade. They're going to wait until they're a senior, but they're moving in 11th grade. Just send us an email, explain what's going on, and we would probably just recommend that the student take that insignia now while they're still at that LEA and affix it probably to their transcript of the LEA who offered the state seal. I hope that helps. If it doesn't, okay, good. Just as always, email us with questions. That's how we decided to modify the insignia request form this year. That's how we build our FAQs webpage, is by all these questions that come in. And so we make small modifications each year to try and account for all these situations. Pardon me, a quick sip. Okay, one more variety of the insignia request form before we move back to the presentation and start closing things up. So we've gone over a new request, a corrected request, and now the additional request. This is in those fortuitous events where you have more students who need the state seal than you originally planned. So you would submit an additional request form. Monterey County, Salinas Union High School District, CDS code, mailing address, because we'll be mailing you more insignias. Let's say we'll add Alisal High back to our list. So when you're using the additional request, you'll notice that the option to indicate that you are reusing insignias does not come up, because our figuring is if you are requesting additional insignias, you probably don't have insignias lying around. If you did need additional, if you wanted to report additional students requesting or getting the state seal, and there were insignias already available, that's where you would use that corrected request form, and you would just tell us that you're still using insignias that have been left over. But this is where you just flat out don't have any more insignias. So let's say you need to request 25 more insignias. That would be for 25 more students receiving the State Seal of Civic Engagement. We would add that number to the number that you previously requested. And then again, down here, you just indicate how those 25 are being affixed. We'll say these 25 are going on grade 12 transcripts. So all 25 grade 12 transcripts, click on next. Certifications, statements, signature, select next. And then this time, since we've gone through all the different options, I'm just going to go ahead and click submit so you can see what happens. Click on submit. It will redirect you to our state seal webpage. And then you should, within a couple of minutes, be getting an email in your inbox confirming that the request went through. And this right here, just so you can see, is where we had our insignia request form for 2023-24. Right here, request state seal insignias, 23-24 request form. When we post the request for this year, we might be moving things around. There might be a specific tab just for insignia requests that will also include this TA webinar and other instructions. So just a heads up about that, but we try to make it really easy to find. Briefly, before I go back to the slides, I will just show you implementation resources. And this is where you can find a lot of helpful resources if you're looking for guidance on implementing the state seal or filling out the request form. We have an overview presentation. This is where that local programming presentation is that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Or FAQs, it's a really useful webpage, if I do say so myself. There's a lot of questions, and we're adding more each year, but a lot of the times, if you're wondering something and you can't find it easily anywhere else, you may be able to find it here. And you can always contact us as well. And then this presentation right here, getting started with the State Seal of Civic Engagement, it's actually somewhat similar to the one that I'm giving today. A little bit shorter, a little bit more streamlined. It's really useful if you are perhaps giving a presentation for your LEA and you need some CDE generated slides with, the official information about the state seal, overview, the criteria, eligibility. It does need to be updated now based on the 10th grade option, but it is there for you as an option if you'd like to use it. Some useful web pages, a lot of them I mentioned earlier in our presentation, and then a couple other resources that I will mention next. All right, I hope that was helpful. I'm going back to our presentation just to finish up with some information about data reporting and then additional resources, and then I think we'll be wrapping up. Thank you all for your patience today and for listening to me go on and on about the state seal. I can talk about it for a while if you couldn't tell. Okay, so suggested record keeping. Record keeping is done at the local level. So each LEA is going to have its own system, its own procedures. But here is what we recommend keeping track of at the local level. So any local student requirements that may have been developed, if there are course requirements, grade requirements, any local criteria, it would be very useful to have that kept track of course. Identified site staff leads or state seal advisors. This is helpful sometimes if I get questions from a student who is looking to get involved, but they're not sure where to start, or another LEA who wants to be in contact with an LEA that does offer the state seal of civic engagement. It's helpful to have that updated and accurate. Any identified community partners, maybe organizations that help out with civic engagement projects would be helpful. If there are any pathway agreements between elementary, middle, and high school programs, timelines or lists of promotional activities, and also civic engagement activities where those fit in the timeline of the school year. It would be useful to have a record of student applications, locally adopted criteria tracking record for each eligible student. That was a mouthful, but basically, if the LEA has adopted any type of criteria in addition to the statewide criteria, some kind of tracking record for how the student has met those criteria. Summary of evidence submitted by students to verify eligibility. So did they submit their GPA, their semester or end of year grades? If there was a local assessment, did they have to submit their scores? If volunteer hours are tracked or civic engagement hours are tracked, etc. The names of students at each site who have earned a state seal. It also might be helpful to have information on any students who applied for but did not receive a state seal if that happens. Of course, the number of insignias distributed each year and how those were distributed among eligible documents. And again, how those insignias were distributed, diplomas, transcripts, GED diplomas, etc. I saw a couple of questions come in. Oh, Laura, thank you. I appreciate that. Just feel like I've gone on for a while, but I appreciate that comment. Brandon, is there a webinar like this for the state seal of literacy? Oh, thank you, Julia, you got it. Yes, there is a website like this for the state seal of by literacy, and they do put on webinars as well. Okay, data reporting. So I want to talk a little bit about statewide data and then also on individual student level data. So in terms of statewide data, the CDE captures and reports requested data provided by, or request data provided by LEAs through the insignia request form. So when you go in and you're filling out that insignia request form and you are indicating the school sites and the number of insignias and how those are distributed, that's the main information that we collect: the school sites, the number, and then how those are distributed. We also collect, of course, contact information, email addresses. That does not get published or shared with any third-party marketers, but we use that to get in touch with questions about requests, and that's about it. The CDE, through this insignia request form, we do not collect individual student names. This is really just looking at the LEA level, the number of schools, the number of students who are participating. We publish this data in a spreadsheet on the State Seal webpage each fall. And so if you have requested insignias in the past from using this request form, and there's been a question and I've asked you to fill out a corrected request, this is why, because this is how we get all of the data that goes into our statewide spreadsheets, which I'm going to go back to the State Seal webpage very quickly and I want to show you. Over here on this overview and participating local educational agencies tab, if you scroll down, you have our statewide spreadsheets for the last 3 years, going back to the very first year that we had insignias offered. So we use the data from the request form to compile these spreadsheets. And so that's why we follow up each summer with LEAs to make sure the data is accurate, and why we ask you to fill out corrected forms if you need to correct something. So we can make sure we have as accurate as possible data. And again, these are published each fall. I am working on the spreadsheet for 2023-24. It's taking a little bit longer than in the past because of another data reporting tool I'll get to next. But it is actually helping us have much more accurate data. So I am hopeful to post that State Seal statewide insignia request spreadsheet also around Thanksgiving, around the same time that we post the updated 24-25 insignia request form. Now, in terms of student level data reporting, this summer was pretty exciting. The CDE, for the first time, collected data on individual students who earned the State Seal of Civic Engagement for determining its future use in the College and Career Indicator, or CCI, on the California School dashboard. So this was the first year that we've done this. Student level data is not currently required through statewide data reporting systems. But when the criteria were adopted, the state board added this request that we look into, hey, how can we possibly track the State Seal on these statewide data reporting systems, perhaps in the CCI? So we tested that out this summer with an education data collection system. So we reached out to the LEAs that requested insignias for this school year and worked with them to submit student level data to that trial tool. So it's a separate process from requesting insignias. If you request insignias from us, chances are you also got emails from us and from CalPAS asking to submit this data to this data collection tool. So that data collection tool is actually still open through the end of September. So we'll have more updates on that, throughout the year. But that is something that was new for this year. Our California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, or CalPADS webpage, has lots of great updates and instructions on this. You can access those at https://www.cde.ca.gov/621-911. And if you're interested in this project, there's a lot of great background information available from our SBE, items related to the SSCE webpage, at https://www.cde.ca.gov/618330. Okay. Wrapping things up, just a couple of more resources that I want to share that might help support your local State Seal programming. First and foremost, you may also, in addition to participating in the State Seal of Civic Engagement, want to participate in other statewide civics recognition options. So one of those is the California Democracy School Civic Learning Initiative. And the Civic Learning Awards. These are two currently available statewide programs that recognize exceptional civic learning and engagement. Los Angeles County Office of Education administers the California Democracy School program. You can find information about this at https://bit.ly/ CALDEMSCHOOL. That's the first option. You may also want to look into the Power of Democracy Civic Learning Initiative resources. So it's a joint venture from the California Chief Justice and the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. They co-sponsor the Civic Learning Awards. It's administered by the Power of Democracy Civic Learning Initiative. The award recognizes school-driven, district-supported civic learning efforts that engage students in civic learning. So those are annual awards. I believe, so they're usually posted each spring. I believe this year they're looking at an early March posting date. So you can access information about the Civic Learning Awards at https://bit.ly/CIVIC-LEARNINGAWARDS. And Elena, I do see Elena mentioned that the California Democracy School application is being updated and will be on the LACO website within the next week. That is excellent and exciting information. Thank you, Elena. One last resource to mention from the Power of Democracy Civic Learning Initiative. They facilitate a very popular program called Judges in the Classroom. It is fantastic. They basically pair public schools, kindergarten through grade 12. They have options. They pair these public schools with judicial office, or excuse me, the mailman is here. So if you can hear dogs barking in the background, that's what's got me distracted for a second. All right. So they pair public schools with judicial officers and can help support. Sorry, hold on one moment. Okay, now the mailman has fulfilled his civic duty, putting up with my barking dogs. All right, sorry about that, everyone. So Judges in the Classroom, they pair local judicial officers with public school classrooms. These judicial officers can go into the classroom in person or remotely and provide a lesson on topics related to the Supreme Court, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Some of their most popular programs are actually talking about what it's like to be a judge, how they became a judge. So it is a really fantastic resource that I recommend you check out, even if your LEA does not yet offer the state seal. So you can get information about that from https://bit.ly/JIC, capital J, capital I, capital C, capital L, capital A, capital S, capital S, capital R, capital O, capital O, capital M. And if you want to stay updated, we do have a dedicated inbox. Our state seal of civic engagement team oversees it. So that is ssce@cde.ca.gov. Any questions about the state seal, email that to us and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We also have a listserv where we send out updates related to the state seal of civic engagement. You can send a blank email message to join-history-social-science@mlist.cde.ca.gov. We also publish updates on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days on accounts on that platform. So the HSS account is @CAEDHSS. You also may want to follow the professional learning, the CDE professional learning account. That is @CAPROFLEARNING. And then our main CDE account is @CADEPTED. All right, that was a flurry of information. I thank you all for bearing with me and being part of this presentation. I know we have quite a few questions. So I think, Julia, if you want to start with the Q&A questions, I can start going over those.
Yeah, so there was a question in the chat about, I'll just go ahead and read it. In my experience, Several counselors have expressed concern about a crowded diploma, especially if students are also earning by literacy, et cetera. Do you have suggestions for how to present the insignia?
Yeah, that's come up. It came up a lot the first 2 years where we had the mega insignia. And now even with our insignia being the same size as the others, there could still be 3 statewide insignias. You could have the state seal of biliteracy, the state seal of civic engagement, and the Golden State Merit Diploma seal. I wish I had suggestions on how to balance all of those on the diploma. I can only share what I have heard LEAs do. There have been a couple LEAs that have created their own local certificate of their own local like award certificate. So the LEA, they're going to have the diploma, they have the transcript, and then they've created an official like LEA-wide certificate that they affix any of these additional seals to. So they all go on one document, and then that document is provided to the student along with their diploma. So in that case, we've recommended that the LEA still indicate that they are putting this insignia on the diploma since that's the intention, and it's going with this local certificate that is presented with the diploma. So that's, I think, the most creative option that I have seen with how to handle the crowded diploma. This is also where we will see maybe LEAs or the students choosing to put the insignia on a transcript instead of a diploma. But then again, the transcripts get crowded as well. That's the only feedback I have for that. It is something I will keep tabs on, and if we get more examples of how LEAs are handling that, I can add that to the FAQs or provide some more updates on other ways that LEAs are handling that.
And then there was another question. Unfortunately, the participant had to leave, but just, you presented a little bit about the judges in the classroom, but could you talk a little bit more about how that type of activity could support earning the seal?
Oh yeah, great question. I would think that the judges in the classroom would most support criterion 2. So, and actually, I'm still sharing. Let me scroll back to criterion 2. Sorry, everyone. Because it's lengthy and there's a lot to it that sometimes may not be, I went right past it, that sometimes may not be part of your traditional US history or American government course. So right here we have criterion 2, competent understanding of US, California constitutions, functions and governance of local governments, tribal government structures, role of the citizen in a constitutional democracy, democratic principles, concepts, and processes. A judges in the classroom lesson would support this tremendously, especially the elements that may not be part of an American government course, or maybe for students who are seeking to earn the state seal before grade 12. Maybe they've been to a series of classes that have had judges in the classroom visits where they've talked about these other parts of criterion 2 that are not maybe part of a typical US history or American government class. And that does remind me, I should mention Los Angeles County Office of Education to support criterion 2 did create some online modules that are meant to help address these items like tribal government structures and organizations that, they're probably not going to be in your typical US history or American government class. So I think like these online modules from LACO, I think Judges in the Classroom is really it's really significant to helping students get to criterion 2. There could also be some partnerships in there. Depending on the type of visit that a student has from a judge, there could be some options for civic engagement between the student and their local judicial office. Could be another possibility. That's a good question.
And then in the chat, in the Q&A, actually, Philip had asked about, thinking about elementary and middle school and incorporating this type of work there. And I know you talked about some of that we encourage it and some of the examples that they could find that are linked in the PowerPoint. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the things you've done, you've heard in elementary?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, it's an area of a lot of interest, but I think it's been hard to get moving. I know it at Fresno County, and I'm not sure if it's Fresno Unified School District. I think it might be countywide. They offer a local promotion opportunity. I think it's from grade 8 to grade 9, where the student can earn, I'm not sure if it's a certificate or a cord that signifies that they have fulfilled the criteria, like local criteria at a elementary and middle school level, and some type of civic engagement project that I'm not sure how it factors into them getting the state seal in grades, in grades 10, 11, or 12. But they have implemented something at the local level there. I think the best example is going to be to look at the Orange County Department of Education webpage. So they have a document with criteria and like guidelines for each criteria of what civic engagement might look like at that grade level. I think that might be the best place to look. But in terms of additional examples that I've seen LEAs carry out, I haven't seen too many. I'm sorry, I can't provide more information on that one.
It's helpful for folks to know, though. So if we'd love to hear if you're doing it,
Yes.
let us know. Yeah. And then there's another one about the data that's being collected in CalPads in the Q&A as well. So what type of participant data is being collected now?
Okay, and this is specific to the new education data collection tool. My understanding is it's very straightforward. I haven't gone through and filled it out myself, but the data that we are looking at is, so the name of the participating LEA, the school sites that offered insignias, and then the number of students at each individual or at each school site. So they're not collecting student names. It's really just trying to get an official look at the number of students and then the number of school sites within each LEA. And it's a pretty quick form to fill out. I'm not sure how or if that will change for next year. This year was referred to as an ad hoc data collection tool. So just kind of trying things out this year. I think the intent is to then look at the data that came in from this year and then move forward maybe with a second year of testing or some other option. I'm scrolling through the chat really quickly too to see if I've missed anything else. Not seeing anything early on, so I'm just gonna.
Looks like something new came in here.
Oh, that's great. In RUSD, we award students the certificate that is awarded at 8th grade awards night. We are working on solidifying our rubric and if working to see if we are able to provide an additional award, pen or cord. That's fantastic. And one of the projects kind of on my back burner has been we have a state seal group on the California Educators Together platform that I've added some basic resources to, but over time, there's been a lot that's been developed or shared that has not made it up there yet. So my goal is to get, for this next year, is to get that state seal group up and going again. And I'd like to have a spot where I can have all of these, 8th grade, middle school, elementary school pathway options in one area so that people can go there and see what's available to use as a model. Any other questions? Was there anything else in the Q&A that I missed?
I think everything has been answered now, so.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very, very much for being part of this lengthy presentation. I'm scrolling like a mad woman to get to this very final page just to have our email up there one more time. We're always happy to help. Julia and Havana, thank you so much. They help me with the emails as well with the insignia requests. So it really is a team effort here at the CDE. We are very excited to start will this be the 5th year? I think so, the 5th year of offering insignias. I can't believe it. So again, this webinar has been recorded. Give us a couple of weeks to process it, and then it will be on the State Seal webpage as well. Right. Oh, thank you. I see Michelle posted Ventura County is also doing great work in this area. Awesome. That is excellent news. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Have a great Constitution Day tomorrow. Make it Constitution Week. All right. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.